Go, bro. We live? Let's go. Finally. These technical difficulties with this guy over here. Make sure.
Welcome back to another live discussion of Real Talk. Co-host, let's just jump right into this, man.
My God.
Last week, the week before, we started off addressing and talking about.
First of all, apologize to the people that were late. Give them that courtesy.
Yeah. Our apologies.
We're gonna do better.
We've been doing better.
We're gonna do better.
But yeah, got caught up in some technical difficulties. But anyways, let's focus back on what we're here to do.
Christian politics, or a Christian politician, or politics and Christianity.
Yeah, and
any of that.
The week before last, we started off by addressing the First Amendment, and we're just going to keep going until we get to the 10th one, or you want to go further than that? Either way, we're going to try to tie it into: is this Christian? What godliness can we seek out of this?
No. The goal is, how would I, as a Christian,
protect these?
Yes, protect the Bill of Rights. How, in my idea, my worldview, right, as a believer. 2 weeks ago, we talked about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and so on, right? And so, some of the arguments that come up with that, as a Christian, how would I defend it? How would I be able to navigate with a biblical, quote unquote, perspective and still be able to keep myself aligned with the will of God, yet uphold the laws of the land?
Right.
Okay. And so that's what we dealt with 2 weeks ago with the First Amendment. Today, we want to deal with the Second Amendment. Do you know what the Second Amendment is?
Pew, pew. Nah,
I
don't know nothing about that, man. I'm a peaceful person.
That's what's up. Well, see, you're insinuating
I'm a peace. I'm a peaceful person.
Yep.
Hold your peace.
You're a peacemaker,
and let the Lord fight your battle.
And that's my peace. That clock.
Yeah. No, I don't do nothing with the Second Amendment. What is it? Bearing the right to bear arms?
It's not about you. It's about you, as if you were to uphold the law or uphold, the Bill of Rights, the amendment, as a politician. If you're a Christian and you want to get into politics, what would be your narrative, or what would be your message when it comes to defending your constituents' rights to bear arms? Because that's really what the Second Amendment is, the right to bear arms. But it's very important. And again, by no means will I say that I have the legal comprehension, the full legal comprehension of really addressing the Second Amendment, other than the understanding I have from learning, researching, and just being a cognizant, logical individual. So let me just read it. Can I read it?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to read what the Second Amendment says. It is the Second Amendment: a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's important to hear the lettering of how it's phrased.
Talking about the militia.
That's what it is. The original architects were recognizing the importance of the freedom of the citizens to band and form an alliance together to create a militia for their protection against invaders or government itself. You with me?
Government allowed us to protect ourselves
from them. Yes.
Wow.
But now, wait a minute.
We're definitely.
But wait a minute. Now, the thing about it is, as just like any rights, it's not just carte blanche. Like, you could just, under the context of that phrase, I could just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's where the battles start getting developed.
But depending upon who you ask.
Exactly. Depends on who you ask and what side of the room you're on. How that is interpreted.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, me personally, I'm not a gun owner. We have several people in our congregation who are legally registered gun owners under the state of New York, which is one of the few states that are strongly in the concealment. You have to have your weapon concealed, okay? And you have to have a permit. In some states, you don't need a permit.
Yeah, no.
And there's about it looks like about 30 of them that have non-permit
a lot of them down south, baby.
liberties.
You don't need that.
So as a Christian, you know, we're going to look at some scripture because there are some advocates who have Christian fundamental views who use the Bible in justifying their standard. Now, I will say this.
Are we looking at both sides or just one side of in your verses that you're looking at?
So I'm really going to be looking at probably just one side, but I'm going to say my side. Like I'm going to share my views as far as, you know, the Second Amendment. So again, we know the Bible does not say, quote unquote, the Second Amendment, but we understand how if the word of God is God's counsel to man on how to live out a godly, righteous life, and the word of God is written with the wisdom of God to address our rationale, our logic, our viewpoint of how to maintain a standard of righteousness in a society, then I'm not going to see the Second Amendment in the Bible, but I'm going to see behavior that's consistent with what is a godly, what godliness looks like.
Gotcha.
Now, I will say this. There's a verse in, I think, Exodus. Yeah, Exodus. That I was like, yo, the gun advocates, yo, this verse right here, crazy. How people interpret things or how people just utilize verses that seem to go in their favor and take it to a whole nother level.
That's the point, right? Interpretation.
Or narrative, storyline.
Narratives, yeah. For myself, not for the
that's the problem. That's the problem is that when you interpret something from your own standpoint or from your own viewpoint, that's the problem. And that's why I say I think being on the U.S. Supreme Court, being a U.S. Supreme Court justice, I think is probably the greatest role in a society. Yes, the president has a great role. I'm not taking away from that. Me personally, though, to shape society, their interpretation of constitutional law determines everything else from them down.
Gotcha.
So whatever it is the standard on the federal level, the states have to use that standard and then draft it from there. They can't go below the federal government. They can make it more restrictive, but they can't go below the standard of the federal government. You get what I'm saying?
I get you.
So that allows society to be shaped by that standard. So I feel like, and they can't be doing it from a standpoint of their own personal desire. It has to come from what's best for society as a whole. What do we got? What do we got?
It says no YouTube link tonight. No, it's on. We do have a YouTube link.
Who is that?
Brittany. It's on.
Yeah, there's people on it, Britt.
There's YouTube.
What is she doing through Instagram?
Yeah. Oh. Nothing. Yeah. So yeah, we have YouTube going on. Just type in Real Talk. You'll see it show up, pop up. If you got the notification bell, you'll be in there. Probably might need a charger in a little bit, but yeah. So you want to use your verses, or you want me to kind of work through what I feel for right now?
For right now, we're just talking about number one. I read what the Second Amendment, how it's written. Okay, but keep in mind, I want you to remember a well-regulated militia. Okay,
a well-regulated militia,
right? Being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, so basically, they're calling it self-defense.
Yeah.
Okay. But keep in mind, self-defense for the free state. Does that mean community or individually? Does that mean the individual has the rights, or does the community have the right to come together as a well-regulated militia, meaning they're controlled, they're under the banner of, citizens, but they're doing it for a sole purpose that is to defend them from either the government or an invading force?
And I would take it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
It would seem as if this government is like trying to do harm to them.
Correct.
Like, it has to be some kind of, not like them just enforcing the law the right way, and then you're like, like,
Right.
no, you're trying to stop me from being able to.
Well, that's another. So this is where people start looking at how things are being derived. Meaning, to your point that you were just asking, right? What happens if the government somehow drastically changes the laws where it says they can do these things that once was illegal, now it's legal? Like removing due process, just go into your home and drag you out and arrest you and deport you or whatever.
Yeah.
Or not, I mean, this is a gross extreme, but pull you out and assassinate you or execute you right there on the streets because the government believes you are a threat and therefore they execute you.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Extreme, yeah, but
that's very extreme.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this is where some people believe. They actually believe the moment you start putting regulations on this amendment, the moment you start attacking this amendment, they automatically assume that's the extreme they're going to take away your right to bear arms so that they can come in and invade you and take over your life. Now, is that possible? Absolutely, right?
Possible, yes.
Possible. How plausible is that? That's where it starts getting where you have to really use some good sense and understanding to work through that argument.
Right.
Okay, is there something you want to say before I move on?
I don't know yet. I haven't gotten the feel of.
Okay, so let's look at some line entries of arguments or how they go about perceiving the Second Amendment as self-defense. Because again, remember, as a Christian, do I support this? Do I jump into the argument? Like, should a Christian be defending the Second Amendment? Is that important to us? The idea is it important to you to preserve the integrity of the commandments or the Bill of Rights versus just wanting my Second Amendment right given to me so I can have 50,000 guns and rifles and handguns and everything in my house?
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, it would always be to defend the integrity of the Constitution, to defend the integrity of the democracy of using the Constitution to regulate our land properly. That's what I would always want to fight for. Now, I may not be a gun owner and I may not care about guns, but to understand the importance of self-defense, right, I would have to continue to support my constituents or the citizens of America to allow them that opportunity to have that right to bear arms.
Understood.
Sound good so far? All right, so let's think about some things. All right, so again, understanding that just because the law says you have the right to do this, right? We have to be careful that we don't assume that it just gives me all the rights and all the abilities no matter what. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
What would be a legal limitation on the right to bear arms? Okay, this is an idea. Would I want an individual who has just been released from the psych hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go into a gun store. They are a citizen of the United States. They are a legal citizen. They've just been released from the psych ward. They've been there for some time, mm-hmm. under treatment and under care. For some reason, they released that person. That person goes to a gun store, buys a semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15.
Okay.
That individual now walks down the street into an elementary school and just stands there. Would you like to see that kind of society?
Would I like to
personally?
See that? No.
Would you like to see that?
No.
Now, what it would be as a constitutionalist, what should I be more concerned about? You as an individual having the right to bear arms, or the condition in which you're bearing that arm and what it would look or what it could do to a society as a whole. What should I be preserving? What should I actually be thinking about looking through the lens of the Second Amendment?
The safety of society.
The safety of society, meaning I should then be able to apply some degree of limitation on the amendment for the what?
No, it's just good luck. like good luck. But I hear you. I do hear
that's the argument.
The argument.
That's
argument
where
is, should there be any limitation?
Exactly. Because again, you have these radicals, carte blanche, Second Amendment, right to bear arms. That's it. Don't tell me nothing else after that. The Bill of Rights offers me that liberty. So don't talk to me about nothing else.
Yeah.
So again, but if I was a Christian politician, would I want to stand on that mountain and fight that battle on that mountain just on that condition?
So when you bring up the word limitation,
yep,
then you bring up the word control.
Absolutely. But
you're trying to control?
But then you're already controlled. So that argument is moot, because once you say you interchange the word limitation to control, you just lost right there. Because if that's your argument, you're controlled right now. You have a driver's license, don't you? You're controlled. You follow stop signs, don't you? You're controlled.
But I have freedom of speech, I have freedom of expression.
Yep. But again, you are controlled. The problem is you looking through the lens of your own personal desire instead of being a logical thinker and being considerate of recognizing the measure of the limitation. But like so many people think, you start giving away 1 degree, they'll take a mile. They're just going to not stop at just making that small limitation. They're going to keep going with it. But then again, that's you as an informed citizen. You as an informed citizen should be listening and paying attention so that when the next round of Congress people come up, you start hearing that verbiage of them wanting to take it further. That's when you can get and jump in the battle. Be like, listen, hold fast to what's this. This has worked. This has been good. Why do this now? Which we're going to get into sharper rulings of the Second Amendment.
Okay.
But for right now, you're good with that, right? So I gave you that scenario.
Yeah, you gave me that scenario
of explaining.
You for some limitations.
I'm for limitations.
Gun control.
It's called gun control.
Yeah, don't try to don't back away now. I'm for limitation. So you're for gun control. Well,
no, I said it's.
You're so calm now.
I said
you was big and bad and bold, Steve, and you was like limitations.
Listen,
yeah, it should be something. The moment you say gun control, you're like,
because
I gotta give you my party card.
No, because you're trying to play it like you're triggering people out there. You're triggering.
I'm not. Listen,
you're triggering.
I like the way that you said. Let's look at the integrity of how it was written,
right?
And let's pay attention as believers, not as just regular citizens, because they can do what they want to do. But
Correct.
As a believer, if I'm trying to uphold this,
correct.
If it's about the safety of the community, which your family includes the community,
like an elementary school,
or
even just
if I have somebody that I know can physically, genetically, like can harm my family, there's nothing I can do in my own physical powers. The ability to have giving me the ability to bear arms would allow me to protect my family and protect and have that safety. I'm not going and looking for any situations. I'm just looking to defend, looking to preserve safety for community, which is my local family. And I feel at that point, unless you're a cop, you shouldn't be trying to go and deal with anybody else's, because that's where people start to get crazy or there too,
but that's the part of being
you
human.
Should be going down the block talking about, I'm going to address this. You go through the proper channels.
Oh, you're saying
the proper channels are call the cops, go do this. Like,
well,
because you're starting to get people who's toting it and just like,
oh, no, you're saying somebody who's just a vigilante. You're talking about a vigilante.
I guess I in their minds, I'm keeping people safe.
Yes. But again, a vigilante, that's another argument. Like the argument of, should that person have the right to go and shoot a person who is doing wrong, just in general public? Again, that's the arguments that show up. Those are the arguments that are being fought in courts right now in regards to what degree is this limitation or this gun control policy or law, what degree should it be established at to maintain the integrity of the Constitution, but also put regulations on it so that people don't walk around thinking they can just do carte blanche, whatever they want for whatever and however. So I use that scenario specifically. There are two, if you can remember, there were two descriptives I put in that scenario on how constitutionalists or the Supreme Court justice or courts in general look through to pay attention on how or what parts should be regulated. There's two identity markers. Which were they? In my scenario that I gave you.
Which scenario?
About the person walking into the school.
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, jeepers. Don't give me. First of all, he was released from that person, not he, but this
individual
was released from a psychiatric hospital, being treated, was under the care for a long time.
But he was released.
Okay. So this person then leaves and goes to a gun shop and buys an AR-14, a semi-automatic.
15.
What did I say?
14.
Oh, 15. AR-15. Yeah, well, I don't have a gun, so whatever. Goes in and buys an AR-15 and then that person walks into an elementary school. Doesn't do anything, but just stands there staring at everybody. Would you want that regulated? And you said yes.
Yes.
What part would you want regulated? That's the test. The test is, what is regulated? Should this individual be stripped of their rights? Or should there be a law that recognizes and regulates steps to that right? For instance, is somebody in a controlled state of mind? Are they properly, do they have their mental faculties proper under the standard of an average individual? That's a test that should be considered. Mm-hmm. Number two, what type of gun should be purchased? Actually, three elements. And number three, open or concealed. You know what I'm saying? Walk around open, or is it a concealed state? So those are the things that have to be looked at. Again,
and also what has to be looked at is in my decision making about it being regulated is how often do you see these things happening?
Yeah.
If that happened once every 2-3 years, I mean, it's tough to say that the entire state now needs to be regulated on this thing. You're kind of looking for a trend to see this is, these things are happening more frequently. So now there's a pattern. And once the pattern shows, then I'm like, yeah, this is getting out of hand. Because if you tell me we shouldn't regulate this, let it play out, well, I'm letting it play out and it's increasing every year. It's getting,
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that element too. Yeah. I'm not the person who just says gun control because this one thing, this situation happened one time.
Okay, so let's look at a verse that advocates use sometimes.
This game's going to the Bible for the straps. Guns ain't even in the Bible, man. It's not even there yet.
Ain't in the Bible. But listen what it says here in Luke chapter 22.
And we in the New Testament.
But this is going to be funny because listen to what happens on how people use
Luke
scripture.
Chapter 22.
Luke chapter 22, starting at verse 33, and it says this. Okay, he says, Luke 22, 33. Here's what Jesus says.
And Jesus talking.
And he said unto them, Luke 22, 33.
Are you sure?
Oh, snaps.
You got the wrong.
No, Luke. I'm in Luke 22, 35. That's why. All right. And he said unto them, this is Jesus, when I sent you without purse and scrip and shoes, lacked you anything? And they said, nothing. Then said he unto them, but now he that has a purse, let him take it, meaning money. Mm-hmm. And likewise, his scrip, meaning, booklets. And he that has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say unto you that this that is written must be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned among the transgressors, for the things concerning me have an end. So that's to the verse 37. So what advocates say is
Jesus told you to go
advocates
if you don't have a weapon, a sword on you. Yeah.
Now, what is a sword for? Sword is for defense.
Protection, yeah.
Exactly. So why would he tell them to go get a sword if he's not inferring they could use it?
Okay.
Right? It's not just a mantle. It's not like having a shotgun in the back of your on a gun rack in the back of your pickup truck's window. You ever see that?
Yeah, seen a lot of stuff. But wait a minute. There's something else after that, though, right? Doesn't he say something like a prophecy?
No. Well, that's what it's right there. It was already there. That's what he just said. He just said.
After he tells him about selling it, he says, I thought he said something like,
he says, and he was, for I say unto you that this that is written must be accomplished in me. And this is the prophecy. And he was reckoned among the transgressors, meaning he was, with the two thieves. And ultimately, that's what's going to happen. And for the things concern me have an end. Verse 38. And they said, Lord, behold, there are two swords. And he said unto them, it is enough. So these cats are strapped.
yeah, but that still makes me think, why would you tell me that? And what does this prophecy have to do with with me wanting to go get this?
Exactly.
Because Jesus, when he's always talking and then referencing something like that, there's an end point to this.
But keep in mind, this is how sometimes radicals or fanatical people will interpret things. Hey, Laureen, what's going on? Good to see you. Appreciate you stopping by. So this is what the things that we have to
good verse, self-protection.
Hold on, watch this. This is what the fanatics don't read, because as you go to verse 47, listen to this.
Of the same chapter?
Of the same chapter.
Luke 22, 47.
So they were in the Garden of Gethsemane when he's asking them this. Now here they are in the Garden of Gethsemane, and while he yet spake, behold, the multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Jesus and kissed him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Watch this. When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? Right? Because Jesus is being attacked. Right? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Listen, verse 51. And Jesus answered and said, suffer ye thus far. And he touched his ear and healed him. Basically, he told him, put away the sword. Why would you tell me to have the sword? Cats is jumping us. Now I'm ready to come at him.
What's the point of having the strap?
Exactly. If you're telling me I can get this 12 gauge, and now I have the 12 gauge, and I'm being attacked, but you're telling me to put the 12 gauge away, what's going on here, Lord? You see what I'm saying? That's how you have to work through biblical interpretation. They just take out, go get a sword. Yeah. That's all they took.
It is finished, or it is good enough, or something like
exactly.
that.
But they don't read the rest of the chapter that states, put it away.
No. We don't need
exactly.
that part. We don't need that part.
Exactly.
But I will read, or you should read. Like he ain't come for peace. He ain't come for peace. So we can
sword.
When we bring that sword, he didn't come for peace. He came to divide.
So they use that. Okay, check this out. This is the verse. I'm sure I've read it because I've read the Bible plenty of times. But
let's give this guy a pat on the back. Good job. Look, because I've read it multiple times.
Hey, I'm just saying. When you get up at 4 a.m. every single day to read the Bible, you eventually get to read it through several times. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And all that get understanding.
Yes, sir. Okay. Exodus chapter 22, verse 2. Listen to what it says. If a thief be found breaking up, and be smitten that he die, there shall be no blood be shed for him. So if a thief enters your house and he get cat for that and ends up dying because you defended yourself and took care of business, there's no issue. You don't have to bring a sacrifice to the priest for your sin. There'll be no blood shed for that.
Okay. Self-defense. I'm with that.
You see what I'm saying?
I'm with that.
Tell me that isn't crazy.
That's
what I'm saying is that verse literally almost seems like it's a slam dunk. Don't talk to me about my guns. Don't talk to me about God.
Protection.
Yeah, exactly. God says I can have my guns.
my weapon.
My weapons. I can defend myself. Deep, right?
Nothing wrong with that.
I don't think the argument is about you not having the right to bear arms. It's evident. This is the challenge, though. Here's what the challenge is. Again, is it collective or is it individual? Does the right go to the collective, the militia, or does it go to the individual? You see what I'm saying?
And the militia means what? The community?
The militia, it says, listen, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So again, is it collective? Does the right only go to the collective to bear arms, or does the right go to an individual independent of the collective or the militia for themselves? That's again the argument.
How would it work for the collective? How do you
because the government gave the citizens the right to do, if even it's predicting, and that's I was going to say that earlier too about what you said earlier. The government is the interpretation of law also is predictive, meaning it's predicting. The framers understood the possibility because of what they've been under, what the English have been under. The government can get so corrupt it could do something to its citizens. We're allowing the citizens under law to protect themselves from that by banding together, as it says, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. So that means to maintain their sovereignty within their community, protecting a free state, they have the right to bear arms. The argument. Go ahead.
And that's why I say it gets too gray to regulate that part.
Why does it get too gray?
It's more black and white for me individually. You can put me through the proper channels. I can be held accountable individually than it is to say at this point, this collectively, this was a good thing for you guys to collectively come together and bear. Like, I just don't see how there's black and white there when you're talking about sovereignty and being that free state to protect yourselves as a community. Like, at what point is it 5 of us? Is it 6 of us? Does it actually we're fine. Is it only on this part of the town like that they're doing this, but not the full town? Like, to me, it just gets too gray for the collective argument.
I understand that.
Whereas it's black and white, like, for me.
I get it. I think that the framers, again, predictability was saying that there's a possibility that the collective, the people, the citizens in a free society would band together. At least it's giving them the right
to band together.
How that unfolds, they're not. You can't determine that. It's just allowing the right to band together under the
I see what you're saying.
Underneath bearing arms for the protection of themselves. It just gives them that right. How it happens, they're not there to write that. It's just saying you have the right. So as
the city
it happens,
of Buff or a village or a town now has the right.
Yes.
I guess what people have said today is like, this doesn't give enough this power given collectively to this group. It's not really enough power.
I don't think they thought it that way. I think people
I'm talking about nowadays, like how it evolved.
That's what I'm saying. They're not thinking about. They could care less about the collective. It's about themselves.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Themselves.
They started to recognize, like, oh, wait a minute, giving this to the village. I gotta see. We can band together. That means we gotta figure this thing out together. We have this coming together to feel to.
I don't think they put that much mind into it. I think they're saying
the protection has to be.
If you give the liberty, if you give the authority for a collective to come together, that means inherently I individually have the right to bear it because I'm the one in the collective. So what they're doing is they're seeing,
or they saw the opposite, that you're saying we can do this collectively, but what if I have some people who are just like, I don't want to move on this collectively. I just feel like people were like, I want this, like,
it could be
draw a line in the sand. I want it to be me.
It could be.
Forget this. We talking about it went to the collective. No, I want it with my name.
It could be because people have challenged that premise. The premise was, I have the right to bear arms, not we have the right to bear arms, even though
it seems like it's framed,
and it was for the
we.
we. It was for the we. But again, that's where people will get really angry. Like, what do you mean? No, they were thinking about the individual. Well, the way it's worded more leaning towards a rationally minded person would see the we in that. They would see that. But so, anyways, but we just read scripture. Jesus talks about getting a sword. They got two. That's perfect. He talks about having a sword, going about your business. But then we see him telling them to hold the sword back, like don't use the sword. So we have to sift through that as a Christian. We have to understand it. I don't think that him telling them not to use the sword removed their liberty to have the sword.
Yeah.
I believe that it was more towards understanding to be in self-control. I believe that we always should have self-control, no matter what liberties we have. As Christians, we have liberties. But Paul said, everything is not good for me. I have to be under control. I have the right to do these things, but is it good for me to do it for myself? Should I go about doing this? No, I don't want to. I need to be under control in order to maintain the temperance that's required to fulfill the will of God.
Is your under control meaning in the moment, or is your under control meaning I don't want to become so overly saturated that that's just what I am comfortable with? Like, because he does say, like, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword.
Yep, he does say that.
Meaning that if I continue to use this if I continue to use it in this moment, that moment, I become so dependent and infatuated with it. That's my source. That's my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just asking you, are you just saying under control or self-control in that moment? Or are you saying have the self-control to understand that while I have this liberty, it is not my source and my dependency, that it doesn't become something that it's my go-to? Because it seems like the challenge is he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. The mindset is I got it on me. This is what I'm going to first versus what am I real like?
What's the real need here at this moment?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Am I thinking peaceful? Am I thinking godly?
Prudence.
Okay.
It's teaching prudence.
Got you.
Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's a part of control. Prudence.
Yes. Yeah.
Attack or refrain from attacking. Take a step forward. Allow someone to understand my next steps will be to attack. Can I diffuse it? Can I, what do they call it? De-escalate the situation.
He wasn't de-escalating. He was like, shh.
Yo, Peter was definitely about not de-escalating. He's like, yo, he already gave me the go. I'm whacking cats.
Or some people would say, no, he de-escalated. He only cut the ear. He could have went straight for the.
He could have stabbed him right in the heart. I get it. Thank God for that. He didn't.
Woo.
Thank God for that. Well, Jesus would have rose him up from the dead anyways.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't time yet.
It wasn't time for that man to die.
It wasn't time for him to go. He had to make a point.
Wasn't time for him to die.
No,
right?
Not yet.
Okay, so let's get into some like what's happened since then. So in 2008, now keep this in mind. In 2008, this guy named Richard Healer. It was the District of Columbia, Washington D.C., District of Columbia versus Richard Heller. Okay, Richard Heller in 2008 got the Supreme Court to strike down a law that the District of Columbia had been using, and it was basically restricting all handguns. Okay. Now, what ends up happening is Heller, goes to courts, the local courts or state courts. They strike it down. Then what happens is he appeals, and it goes to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court analyzes it, looks at the arguments, and realizes that the rights do extend themselves to the individual. You with me? Now, what I did was I said to myself, okay, that's a huge shift. Meaning,
who was on the courts at this time? Because it's all human interpretation. It's all human perspective at this point, man.
I will say this. In my research, I do like how the justices analyze things. Like they look for, like, within the framing of the amendment, what is the undertones of leading to that? Like, what is it that's being actually infringed? They try to rationalize the argument and see what's underpinning the actual article, meaning the amendment. not to infringe on one's freedom to bear arm for defense. Okay, and then what were the precepts before that? Now, one of the things they try to do is they try to see what has been the traditional standard of the nation under that Constitution for this new argument that comes up. And they said they had to find it. Right? They had to find something before 1900. Of course, they couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything prior to 1900, right? So then they had to come up with some new ways of defining it, without going through all of that, because it's just a lot of legal language. But ultimately what happened was that the Supreme Court justices agreed that the right extends to the individual, not just to the collective, but to the individual. Overturned
keep going.
Overturned the premise of the state's ban on handguns, that now they were allowed to own handguns.
Okay.
Again, each state still battling in regards to how the handgun liberty is exercised, meaning, is it concealed? Is it not concealed? Do I have to get a permit? Do I not have to get a, so those things, but the handgun has been accepted, right?
Right.
So I researched, I said, okay, since 2008 to now, how much gun violence has increased, to see if it was helpful. Because again, you got to ask yourself, doing that, did it help or did it,
well, how far did you go back and make the comparison? Like, did you go
no, 2000, all that
before it?
No, I just said from 2008, after it was legalized, gotcha, to now. So we've gone up 18% in gun violence. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, gun violence in and of itself is bad. It's horrific. Mm-hmm. It's tragic. We just had a tragedy over the weekend. Very, very bad tragedy. One of our members in the church, best friend, was just murdered on Saturday, gunned down on Jefferson and Broadway. Yep. And I actually worked with the young man's father. The young man's father works down at the Key Bank Center. Tragedy. So gun violence is horrific. It's horrible. It's just sad. It's destroying the Black community. It's just devastating. But
destroying some churches, synagogue, places of worship. Now it's going kind of public with certain things. But whatever. Go ahead. I'm cutting you off.
Mass.
We do need a charger, but go ahead.
Oh my God.
Go ahead, keep talking.
Mass what am I saying? What is it? Mass shootings have been mostly semi-automatic weapons, been basically your semi-automatics, your Tech 9, so on and forth. As you all know, Buffalo experienced a horrific crime 2 years ago on May 14th. 10 members of our community, Black, gunned down by a racist young boy. Devastating. Semi-automatic weapon, just killing people as soon as they walk out of the store, just taking people out. Horrific, absolutely horrific. And stories like that makes you want to just completely put an ultimate ban on everything. You don't want to ever see a person get another